Dodge this.
One world currency.
The New World Order.
Those are the roots of trouble.
I imagine that right now you're feeling a bit like Alice, tumbling down the rabbit hole. Let me tell you why you're here. You're here because you know something. What you know you can't explain, but you feel it. You felt it your entire life. That there's something wrong with the world. You don't know what it is, but it's there, like a splinter in your mind, driving you mad. It is this feeling that has brought you to me. This is your last chance. After this, there is no turning back. You take the blue pill, the story ends. You wake up in your bed and believe whatever you want to. You take the red pill, you stay in Wonderland, and I show you how deep the rabbit hole goes. All I'm offering is the truth, nothing more.
For we are opposed around the world by a monolithic and ruthless conspiracy that relies primarily on covert means for expanding its sphere of influence, on infiltration instead of invasion, on subversion instead of elections, on intimidation instead of free choice, on guerrillas by night instead of armies by day. It is a system which has conscripted vast human and material resources into the building of a tightly knit, highly efficient machine that combines military, diplomatic, intelligence, economic, scientific, and political operations. Its preparations are concealed, not published. Its mistakes are buried, not headlined. Its dissenters are silenced, not praised. No expenditure is questioned, no rumor is printed, no secret is revealed. But I am asking your help in the tremendous task of informing and alerting the American people.
And now, welcome to another episode of Down the Rabbit Hole. Here's your host from federaljack.com. It's Popeye.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another live edition of DTRH. It is April 9th, 2015. Whew. Next week I'm going to be on the road, so I won't be live. Actually, in the next 2 weeks, till at least the beginning of May. It's going to be best of. Not tonight, obviously, I'm live, but next week it'll be best of. And the following week it'll be best of. I'll make sure I pick some interesting broadcasts, especially since I know I have a bunch of newer listeners. I will probably at least once or twice play some older stuff for you all. I'm sure you'll appreciate that. Especially the people that are just tuning in the past few months, maybe just tuning in today, last week, whenever. So, yeah, stay tuned for that. Interesting road trip ahead, to say the least. Interesting. So, I had to get myself into the mental state to talk to you all tonight. This was actually a pretty rough show to prepare for. The topic that I'm going to be covering, PTSD, or as I like to call it, PTS, because there is no disorder in post-traumatic stress, or there shouldn't be anyway, but the disorder I see is the complete lack of understanding of what PTSD, as it's labeled today, really is. So that's where the disorder lies, in the understanding. And that goes from the general public to the medical community. There's very few medical professionals that even have a vague understanding of what PTS really is. Now, from time to time, you'll hear me refer to it as PTS because I'm trying to put that out into the universe, trying to make that the term that's used when people refer to it instead of saying PTSD. Being the change means going out and changing the lexicon. So that's what I'm trying to do. So when you hear me refer to PTSD as PTS, I'm referring to the same thing just in case people are wondering, because I'm sure sometimes it confuses people. But I don't view there to be a disorder in post-traumatic stress. So anyway, tonight I had to get into the mindset for this. So It's going to be an interesting, raw, very raw. Like, I'm going to speak to you right from my heart. I'm going to tell you things that maybe other hosts would hide from you. But I feel that if this world is going to heal, somebody has to make that emotional sacrifice. And some of the things that I've gone through recently have been very public because I am, I guess, somewhat of a public figure because I do radio. So what better or who better to go over this stuff other than me, right? So why not? Before I get into it, I just want to let everybody know, I did get new business cards in. What I'm going to do is I'm going to do something old school. I did this once before and it worked out really well, so I'm going to do it again. I'm going to do something old school. Anybody in their 30s or 40s can remember a time when we used to go in like Popular Science or comic books, and you used to be able to go in the back, and a lot of times you could get free stuff if you wrote the place and you gave them a self-addressed stamped envelope. So that's what we're going to do here. You want business cards, I will send them to you. You don't have to pay me for them. I mean, if you choose to give some sort of money to Federal Jack or to me, give it to just go to federaljack.com. There's a donate button. I get any of the donations and I end up using it to pay for server fees and stuff. That would be better. You don't have to pay me for business cards. I don't want that. Okay. Just send me a self-addressed stamped envelope and I will mail them to you. Now, self-addressed stamped. That means you take an envelope, right? You write your name on it, your address, like in the to section, not in the from section, but in the because that's what I'm going to mail back to you. And you put stamps on it. Put like 2 stamps just to make sure, because I'll load the cards in there, and I'll have them weigh it out when I go to the post office just to make sure there's enough postage. But put at least 2 stamps on the envelope, right? And then you take that envelope and you fold it and you put it inside of another envelope and you address the one that you put it inside of, that you're going to use as the mailing envelope. You address it to me and I'll give you the address right now. Okay? So everybody get your pens, your pieces of paper, pads, whatever. Okay? And I will give you the address right now. You ready? Address it to federaljack.com, federaljack.com, P.O. Box 2642. That's P.O. Box number 2642 in Sanford, Florida, Sanford, Florida, 32772. Send all of your self-addressed stamped envelopes, and obviously in the envelope that you mail it, you mail the self-addressed one to. Just put a little note, Popeye, please send business cards. So, I know exactly what it's for. Even though I'll know what it's for when I get them because I know I did this on air, still, I'm human, and just like you, I go through things during the day and I forget. So, to make it easier for me, do that. Okay? Everybody, one more time. federaljack.com, P.O. Box number 2642, Sanford, Florida, Sanford, Florida, 32772. If you send me a self-addressed stamp envelope, I will send you some business cards. All right, so there you have that. Let's move on to the actual topic of tonight's broadcast. But I wanted to put that out there because I put a picture up. My new cards literally came in like 3 or 4 hours ago, and I put a picture up on Instagram, which it automatically, I have it set if I do that, because I'm trying to use all of their social media networks to my advantage. I know a few other people that do that as well. Works pretty good. Anyway, I took a picture of the business cards and I put them up there, and I got messages on Facebook. I got inundated messages on Facebook, comments on Instagram, and emails asking me how they could get some of these cards to pass them out in their area. I did this before with federaljack.com business cards years ago. So I thought about it and I said, why not just do what we did years ago and do the old school self-addressed stamp envelope trick? So that's what we're going to do. So there you have it. So now, let's get into the crux of tonight's discussion, shall we? Let's get into what PTS is. So, first, I think everybody needs to understand that anybody could have PTS or PTSD. The dreaded PTSD. The way they address it and they talk about it is as if you have it, you're some sort of monster. And I got interested in this topic of trying to help people understand this because of what I've been through with it, what I've seen my friends go through with it. And one of the things that made me realize that people have no idea. I mean, I already knew that the doctors really didn't have an idea from my own personal experiences, but I mean like people out in the general public having no idea. I figured it out when Merce, my wife, was she was teaching a yoga class, where she was taking a yoga class for teachers. If you're in Florida or a couple other states, you might have heard of a free yoga program called what is it called? Connected Warriors. And the lady Judy Weaver that put it together, I want to give her a big shout out. And Randy Hamlin, he's a vet, Marine vet. He's a great guy. He listens to the show, a friend of mine. Randy and Judy and everybody that works for them, all the yoga teachers that volunteer their time for these veterans, they give free yoga to vets, and they help these guys. They're helping people overcome physical wounds and PTSD. And Merce, she was taking the class. It was one of the first times they were putting this together when it was a very fledgling thing. And she was taking the class, and I went with her because she had told them that I was a vet and they wanted me to go. She told them, what I went through. And I shared my experiences with the teachers. I shared them what I went through, the things that I did when I was first going through my PTSD. I mean, I used to do crazy things. Like I used to chase drug dealers off the street where I used to work with a baseball bat. These guys had guns and knives. And anybody that worked with me knows this isn't hyperbole. This is reality. They called me Tattoo, and they were afraid of me. When they saw me coming, they would leave the block, because I would go up to them in groups of 5 or 10, and I would challenge the ringleader, and I would tell them I was going to kill him if they didn't leave. And they'd all have knives and guns, and they'd be like, "You must be insane." And I was like, "Oh, I am." And they saw it in my eyes that at that point in time, I really was. But that's the kind of crazy things I used to do, and that's some of the things that happens when you go through this stuff. You have these different emotions or whatnot. I'll get into this. But I was explaining all this to these yoga instructors, and they didn't have any idea. They were very surprised that it could be that extreme. But then I explained to them, and this is the part that really surprised them, that anybody could have PTSD. And I looked at them and I said, you do realize that if you were raped or in a car accident or somebody you loved died or whatever was traumatic to your brain happened, it could cause you to have post-traumatic stress. They didn't understand that. They thought it was some weird reaction to being at war, because that's the only time PTSD has really been talked about. And see, I even make the mistake of calling it PTSD. I should say PTS. So that's the only time it's really been talked about. They used to call it shell shock and all this other stuff, battle fatigue, combat fatigue. It really was never talked about. And you'll get the older generation, that the World War II guys that'll say, I don't know why you got to talk about this shit. We came home from war and blah, 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 blah. Well, it was a little different. You guys were fighting kids at the end when they were in Germany, like inside Berlin. And that, you had the Nazi youth going up and attacking American and Russian troops. But for the most part, you weren't mowing children down. And you weren't dealing with suicide bombers and things like that. It's a little different. You weren't going on 8, 10, 12 combat tours for like 5, 10 years either. It's just the nature of warfare is different. The beast is a little bit different than it used to be. I'm not downplaying what those guys went through. They should have been talked to about what PTS was. They shouldn't have been blown off the way they were, but I digress. So the only time it's really been talked about now has been since people came home from war, right? And they're experiencing that. You can't hide it. I mean, there's no way to hide it. It's going to come out. So now they're talking about it, but it's all focused on war and soldiers, and anybody can have PTSD, or what should be called PTS. Okay, I want to stress that. Anyone, any stressful situation, you could have had a traumatic childhood growing up that could have led to you having PTSD. That's actually part of what led to I realize now, going back, that I had PTSD going back to when I was young, because I actually had a very traumatic childhood to a certain extent, more mentally than physically, but enough that it was traumatic. And I realized this when I was in my mid-20s, and I didn't know what PTS was. I didn't know any of this stuff back then, but I knew something was up. I knew my brain needed to heal. I remember thinking my brain needed to heal. So I literally changed the way that I interacted with the world. I became more fun-loving and laid back and just tried to relax and be a little bit more mellow. And then 9/11 happened. And then, I helped out as much as I could. Anybody that was there, everybody that I know that helped out. And even if you guys are listening, you know what I'm talking about. We have survivor's guilt because of it. There's no way around it. If you were a first responder and you were a firefighter or an EMT or a cop, you have survivor's guilt to a certain extent in that area. You may not even realize it, but you do. Okay? And it's the way it is. So I was dealing with all that, and then I joined the military. And then my time in the military, which if I didn't even understand that I was dealing with PTS at the time. So now I understand why certain things in the military were more difficult than they should have been. Mentally, tougher. I overcame them, but I understood a lot of things. I understood a lot of the decisions I made throughout my life during that whole time period. And then the mother of all things, that at least in my life, that could cause PTSD was, and many of you know that my wife passed away, but Merce died in my arms. I did CPR on her at the house. She collapsed in my hands. And I dropped to my knees and I immediately did CPR on my wife, and I kept her alive until the paramedics got her. She almost died in my arms, I should say, the first time here at the house. And then I kept her alive, and the paramedics got here and they kept her alive. She arrested a few times in the ambulance, and she arrested at the hospital. She was in a coma for 3 days, and then after they woke her from the coma as best they could, they did an EEG, and she was brain dead. And I had to, after saving my wife and doing everything I could and fighting like hell to keep her alive, I had to let her go. I had to unplug her, and I had to hold her hand, which I did, until her heart stopped beating. And I talked to her the entire time. And I petted her on the head, and I kissed her head, and we listened to our wedding song. And I can't tell you how hard and how painful that was to do. But it had to be done for her. Now, I know that whole experience caused me trauma to my brain. I know it traumatized her family and the people that were there. I know it even traumatized my father, my 73-year-old Vietnam veteran father, who's been through some really horrific things in his life. I mean, he's a tough dude. I mean, I like to break my dad's balls, but I got nothing but mad respect for the guy. All right. Him and I always haven't seen eye to eye over the years, but we've worked our issues out, and I have a lot of love and respect for my father. He's a tough guy, and I watched my father break down and cry for the first time in front of me that night. Never seen my father cry in 38 years. Never. So I know how powerful and how traumatic of an event it was. Now, I share that with you not for you to feel bad for me. I don't want you to be crying and, oh, poor Popeye. I don't want that. I share my event with you to help you understand that as tragic as it is and as horrible as it is, it's not warfare, and yet it still caused me PTS. So do you understand that there are situations in life that will do it? And I don't want to hear someone say, well, okay, your situation is good, but these other people claiming blah, blah, blah. How do you know what was traumatic to that individual? How do you know what they went through? My mother used to tell me you shouldn't judge a man until you've walked a mile in his shoes. Like the old Native American proverb, don't judge another man until you walk a mile in his moccasins. Same thing. That's why I try to understand people. I try to sit down and listen to them. And we're going to get into that later, because that's a huge part of this. Now, anybody can suffer from PTS, ladies and gentlemen. You're in a car accident, you can have it. If you're a woman and you've been raped, if you're a guy and you've been raped, it could probably even be more. I mean, I'm sure it's extremely traumatic for a woman. To a guy, it's probably traumatic and even ego damaging to a large extent because you're a man. You can't protect yourself, and now you were sexually violated in the worst way. It's horrible. children that are beaten, children who lose a loved one, a parent. It's not so uncommon. In fact, I'm pretty sure that like 75 or 80% of the population has it at any given point, especially with all the crap that's going on now. You know, maybe it wasn't so rampant back in the day, but it's, you know, all the stuff that's out in your face. You know, the stuff that you see on TV, all the gore. You know, they didn't put that stuff on TV back in the day, not because they were worried about, they didn't want to violate FCC rules. No, okay, yeah, there were rules and stuff, but you realize that they knew that that kind of stuff not only desensitized people, but it traumatizes the brain to a large extent. And that's where the desensitization, I can never say that word. That's where I can never say that word for some reason. My lips just do not work. Anyway, that's how people get desensitized to the whole anything involving gore, violence. I mean, if you put Saw on TV 20 years ago, they would have freaked out. You couldn't even... The Exorcist. Go look what happened when The Exorcist came out in the movie theaters. People were freaking out and passing out. Okay? Literally. They're having anxiety attacks and stuff. Can you imagine if they put Saw or Hostel? They cut the dude's Achilles tendon. Can you imagine if they put Hostel in the movie theaters 20 years ago? But because they've ramped it up slowly over the course of time with the gore and the blood, and at first, when they first did it, they knew it was going to make a ripple and, you know, it was going to be felt across the pond, but eventually the ripple would go away and it becomes normalized. You do realize that when you're watching that stuff, right? You're traumatizing your brain. I know I got a little off, but I wanted to point that out just so you understand. So at any given point, to varying degrees, by the way, PTS doesn't manifest. This is one of the misunderstandings of PTS. There isn't a set level of like PTS, right? Like there's no, you know, as my good buddy Joe Joseph would say, where do you take the base reading from? Well, good point, Joe. And there is no base. There's really no base level to start with. I guess if you wanted to start off at, you know, not being traumatized at all to, you know, 10 being extremely traumatized, you could do something along those lines. But there is no set like, well, you have PTS, so you're going to be like this, and you're going to be like that for a few days, and then you're going to be like this for a month. That's not how it works. That's not at all how it works. Okay, so everybody's level of post-traumatic stress is different according to what they went through. I watched the love of my life die. Right, I fought like hell to save her, and then I had to 3 days later unplug her from life support and let her go willingly. As angry and not wanting to do it as I was, I had to do it. I had no choice for her. Okay, that was traumatic to me. It was extremely traumatic, right? So that's a huge like event, right? But what about if someone's just in a simple car accident? They're by themselves. They're not hurt where they even have to go to the hospital. But it wasn't expected, right? It was a traumatic event. It scared the crap out of them. Their heart's going a mile a minute. Their adrenaline's going for like 20, 30 minutes after it. Their brain was traumatized. They could have died. It could have killed them. Now, it may not be on the level of what I'm going through with my wife, but there still is a level of PTS there. So there isn't a set level that people go through. It varies to degrees. But I really believe, and this is from my years of going through it myself and breaking it down, and this is how I've work through it. And I'm not, you know, you don't ever totally get through it. You start to deal with it. And well, I mean, you kind of do. There is I don't want to say there's no hope. There is a light at the end of the tunnel to a certain extent. But this is how I work through it, is by analyzing what I go through and what I see my friends going through and others with PTS. And I try to break it down as I do with everything. That's how I work. And I try to understand it so then I can adapt and overcome. One of the things I find that does help is talking about it. Now, I know a lot of people that have it for different varying reasons, whether it be combat veterans, you know, rape survivors, whatever. And they all say the same thing, that talking about it is the one thing that really helps. and talking about it with people that understand. And that's one of the reasons I wanted to do this show tonight, because we need, not I, the world needs people to have a better understanding of everything, including, okay, or a better comprehension. If you actually know what the word understood or understand means, yeah, you wouldn't want to actually use the term understand, like I stand under your authority. But anyway, I digress. So, if everybody had a better comprehension, perhaps, a better comprehension of each other, a better comprehension of how things work, not just PTS, but a lot of things, by the way, the world would be a much better place if we I guess I have to say the word understood. If we understood each other a little bit better, if we were all willing to walk a mile in the other guy's moccasins, right? Maybe there wouldn't be so many misunderstandings or miscommunication. Maybe the powers that shouldn't be wouldn't be able to keep us separated, keep people in fear of each other. Oh my God, that guy's got PTSD. Oh my God, he's gonna get a gun and kill everybody. Oh my God, no, and no. That's not what happens. See how easily that can be taken the wrong way? And by the way, you can't deny that when it comes to the police state and restricting everything under the sun in this country, they're using mental health as a reason. Maybe that's why they're putting all that traumatic crap out there, to slowly traumatize those brains of yours. Ooh. Stay tuned, ladies and gentlemen. 3 short minutes. We are back, ladies and gentlemen. So, when we went into the break, I was breaking down what PTS is. And before I get back into it, I want to give a message to my fellow brothers and sisters out there, okay, that know that they suffer through this and go through this. Forgive yourselves for the mistakes that you've made in the past. Forgive yourselves. It's the hardest thing you're going to do. Forgive yourself. Before you can overcome anything else, you have to go into the mirror, look at yourself in the eyes, and genuinely talk to yourself on a soul level. Like, look yourself in the eyes, see your soul, and speak to yourself. And tell yourself it's okay for the mistakes that you've made in the past. It's okay. It's okay. It's okay. You know what? You made a mistake. You're a human. And actually, what did Kennedy say about mistakes? He actually said that they're only errors unless you refuse to correct them. Right? An error only becomes a mistake when you refuse to correct it, is what he said. So correct your mistakes. Don't dwell on the past. Don't hold it against yourself. God, I was such a dick. Or I was an ass. Or whatever you do to yourself. You beat yourself up for things that you did. Maybe, did you ever look back at that time period and say, wow, I didn't even understand what I was going through. I'm going through this very normal, I will add that again, very normal response to a very traumatic event. No one around me understands what's going on, so I can't really talk to anybody about it. And to top it off, then people are completely misreading the blaring signs, the red flags that you need someone to talk to, that you have post-traumatic stress, and they take it the wrong way. And it's just like this vicious cycle. And then you make bad decisions, and then years later, when you're going through whatever you want to call it, recovery or you're healing, you look at yourself and you beat yourself up, and you're like, "Oh, what an idiot I was! Stupid!" Stop it. Words have intention behind them, even if you don't realize it or don't mean it. Our bodies are made of mostly water. The Japanese have done water experiments. I forget the professor's name. They put pieces of paper with positive messages and negative messages on them. They even did it, I think, where they were speaking to the water or pumping it with, they had like a recorded loop of like positive stuff and then a recorded loop of negative. I don't remember if it was recorded or live, but I know they did it with the paper, and I think they actually did it with spoken voice. But the water that had positive vibrations and love sent to it had these beautiful formations, and the ones that had all this hatred and anger thrown at it were just horrific. They were all ugly. And that's what we're doing to ourselves when we beat ourselves up for the mistakes that we made, especially, and this goes across the board, ladies and gentlemen, not even for PTS sufferers, but I mean, anybody in general. Forgive yourself, because that's how we're going to heal this planet first. You can't love anybody else until you love yourself. You can't truly love somebody until you love yourself first. And I don't mean living for yourself and not caring about anybody else. I mean, you have to forgive yourself and truly just let yourself off the hook and love yourself. And be like, you know what, self, I love you, you're a good person, and give yourself positive affirmation. Okay, but for the people that have PTS, especially don't beat yourself up for the stupid mistakes that you made while you were going through it and you didn't even understand it back then. Like I've been there. I've made a lot of mistakes that I beat myself up for years over it, physically and emotionally. Okay, you can't beat yourself up over these things. Your brain wasn't operating normal. You were going through a very traumatic experience, and then on top of it, you didn't have a support system, and you didn't understand anything. The fact that you survived to this very day and are here listening to my broadcast is a testament to your strength. Don't you ever forget that. Ever. Don't think that you're weak because you have those emotions or you made mistakes. You're strong because you're still here to this day, even though you made those mistakes. Keep that in mind. Forgiving yourself for your past transgressions is the hardest thing to do, but if you can forgive yourself and learn to love yourself, then, and only then, will you truly emanate the proper frequency of love out into the rest of the universe, and then you'll be able to truly love other people. You don't have any hope of loving anybody if you don't understand that you have to love yourself first. Okay, you're not going to give off that proper vibe. It doesn't work that way. Give yourself a break. You deserve it. It's that simple. You went through something traumatic, and afterwards, the things that happen probably because the way that we handle PTS in this country, unless you have a good family and a good support system and a good set of friends. Most people don't understand it. Many families weren't raised with this stuff. They don't talk about this kind of stuff. Okay? I know in my family, they didn't talk about anxiety or anything like that. Shh, you don't talk about that kind of stuff. Suck it up. That was my mom. It wasn't even my dad. That was my mom. But that generation, they didn't discuss anxiety. They didn't understand that stuff. They didn't understand PTS. They didn't understand any of that stuff. So it was just I came to an understanding of this later in life. Understanding what I go through. I came to this drastic understanding after I did a lot of self-reflection. And it's still, I'm not a guru. Okay, I'm not coming here tonight to talk to you all as if I'm on a soapbox and telling you, I survived this, I made it through. Buy my book for $20. No. Although I should write a book about this, but because it would probably reach more people and help people because that's the goal, but that's not why I'm here. I'm still going through this every day. I mean, when I was telling you about Mersey 20 minutes ago, I was crying. You couldn't hear it, but I had tears coming out of my eyes while I was talking about it. I just carried on. I'm good at that. Doesn't mean it doesn't affect me. I still go through it. I miss my wife every day. Right before I came on air, about 10 minutes before I came on air, I was standing in the living room looking at one of her pictures, and I was talking to her. And I said to her, I need your help. Give me the strength to do this tonight and talk to them. Because I was mentally getting myself prepared. And just thinking about the stuff brought a tear to my eye. So I know, I get it. I still go through it every day. I'm not coming to you as a guru. I'm not coming to you as some quote-unquote expert. I'm coming to you as somebody that knows this firsthand because I've been through it and I've sat with my friends and I've talked with them. I'm not a counselor. I'm just someone that's been through this, and I'm a good friend to those who need it. And I'm tired of the world not understanding what PTS really is. I'm tired of the world having this misconception about it. Because we're not gonna get anywhere. We're gonna continue to be we're gonna continue to be, to a large extent, controlled. I mean, I could get into the whole side issue like I was touching on when we went to break about them traumatizing your brain over and over and over again and all these other things. But I don't want to get sidetracked. I want to stay on the subject of PTS. Anyway, so PTS, now that I've given you all that little side rant for a few minutes, love yourselves, forgive yourselves for any transgressions you've made, especially while you are going through, PTS. Give yourself a break. Go look at yourself in the mirror, tell yourself you're a good person, love yourself, and just go be a good person. And if you feel that you're not a good enough person, if genuinely, and most of the time we beat ourselves up a little bit too much, but if genuinely you really think you could do more, then go out and do more. Be the change. It's that simple. Don't sit on your ass and be like, oh, I could do more. I mean, I'm such a jerk off for... So get up and do something. Start a blog. Start a podcast. Start a YouTube channel. Have video screenings. Call your friends together. Get everybody together and, buy one of these documentaries or rip it from YouTube. And most of these new TVs, you can just put YouTube on the television now. Just get one of these YouTube documentaries and put it up and invite a bunch of people over. Get some, chips and everything. Treat it like you would a game or anything else. The same type of atmosphere. Instead, maybe show them a movie or something. There's things you can do, ladies and gentlemen. Go out in your community and meet your neighbors. Maybe have a community meeting. Plant a garden. There's a lot of things you could do. But do it. Go out and be the change. Don't just sit on your ass and wish you could. Or, I could, but I'm such a horrible person. You're just beating yourself up relentlessly for no reason at all. It's a rut. It's a cycle that I've done it. I speak from experience. I've been there. Okay? Give yourself a break. Step up. Change the world for a better place. And love yourself. Okay? Now, moving on. PTS. So, some of the symptoms, right? Well, medical science, right? The whatever you want to call it. They try to explain to you that, there are certain symptoms that we know every PTS sufferer goes through. Well, okay. I will say that there are common things that many of us go through. Flashbacks to the event. Night sweats. My flashbacks are interesting. I wake up doing CPR sometimes. I'm not kidding. When I have flashbacks, it's usually, it was when I was falling asleep and when I was waking up. Now it only happens when I wake up sometimes. Right before I wake up, I'll relive the event where I'm doing CPR on her on the floor, and I can actually feel her sternum. It's so real. I can feel her sternum popping like it was when I was doing CPR. That's how you know you're doing CPR. If you pop someone's sternum and you could feel their ribcage moving up and down. Just so you know, by the way, in case you ever have to do it, you do have to press that hard. And don't be afraid to. Trust me, when the love of your life is on the floor turning blue, you can be surprised how hard you'll pump her heart. So, I relive that sometimes. And I wake up, and I've woken up a few times where I'm on my knees on my bed doing CPR on a pillow. And I wake up and I'm like, holy shit. It happens. And anybody that's been through a traumatic event, a lot of the times, they'll suffer flashbacks. Now, I don't want people to think that the flashbacks are craziness or anything like that. It's not. Actually, what the flashbacks are, and the only way I can describe this is picture your brain after it's been, if you want a visual, picture your brain, and then the trauma is kind of like this, I guess like a bubble around your brain, right? And then picture that bubble that's encasing your brain kind of like an onion. And if you take the onion, right, and you peel away layer by layer, there's new layers underneath, right? And there's new fresh onion to deal with. Well, it's kind of the same thing. So as you go through the trauma, your brain puts you in shock when you go through something traumatic, by the way. That's why quite often the symptoms of PTS won't show up sometimes they don't show up for a couple weeks, couple months afterwards, maybe even years afterwards. In the case of many Vietnam vets, a lot of them are starting to suffer PTS in their older ages, and people didn't understand why. Well, because they came home from the war and they had to put that on hold because they had families to raise and everything else. Now, many of them might have had episodes where they freaked out if the kids did something wrong, and that, if you ask the kids, "Oh, my dad was pretty heavy-handed." Well, a lot of the stuff that he went through, those outbursts, were PTS. Okay, they just didn't understand it, but it really hits them hard when they retire because now they're not working anymore. They're sitting around, and all of a sudden, it all comes rushing in on them. Okay, that's why a lot of the guys from the Vietnam era, as they get older, are they had it, but it really hits them like a freight train as they get older. Now they don't have a distraction from it, right? So, and then they go in and then they go, "Oh, well, blah, 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 blah. And, here's some pills." And they don't really talk to these guys. They don't tell them, "Hey, you know what, the things that you did when you were going through this, forgive yourself. You have to, now, if you were mean or physically abusive to people and stuff, and you were a dick, well, then you have to go talk to those people and you have to atone for that. And you have to be prepared that they might tell you to go screw. And you have to be willing to accept that. You can't push on them and be like, "But you need to forgive me." No, they don't need to forgive you. If you were really that much of a dick to them, they don't need to forgive you for anything. Okay? Remember that. You can't force. That's the other thing. You can't, if you're going through this and you're healing, you can't, and somehow in your struggles of, like, especially like war veterans and stuff, if you're a dick to somebody because of your PTS and then you later realize it, and you caused way too much damage for them to, maybe they forgive you, but they don't want to just deal with you because you've soured them towards you right now. You can't push yourself on them. Don't. You have to be prepared for that. That might be an outcome of it. You're going to have to deal with that. You have to accept it. There's certain things that you have to accept. The not accepting it and the trying to run from it because you're afraid of dealing with it, that doesn't help. That exacerbates the situation. So anyway, PTS is kind of like this layer, right? This dome around your brain, and it's got layers to it. Now, as the shock wears off, your brain, it's a defense mechanism. This is completely natural, by the way. Your brain does this to keep you from losing it. This is a defense mechanism to keep your psyche from shattering. And by the way, going to the whole mind control thing, they know this. That's what trauma-based mind control is for, okay? They understand more about PTS than they're going to let you know, but they just don't want to let you know why, by the way. And they really don't, they haven't researched it for therapeutic value at all, but they've certainly researched it for 50, 60 years on how to make little compartmentalized spaces inside the human brain to have different personalities and things like that. Anyway, I don't want to get sidetracked, but PTS, right? And like I said, you should look up the whole mind control thing. So you have flashbacks. You'll have night sweats and stuff. All of that is your body reacting physiologically to you going through the stress, right? So the shock starts to wear off. The shock over 3-4 months, however long, maybe just a couple weeks. Everybody's different. It all depends on how you deal with stuff. It depends on many different things, the level of trauma, the event. It doesn't matter if it's mild or hardcore. The basics are still the same. It's just everybody has to go through it in their own thing, right? It's everybody's unique experience. But if you understand that there's like a base level of understanding of what post-traumatic stress is, at least from my analyzation of it, it helps the person that's going through it understand that it's normal, it's natural. That's why I don't use the term disorder. I don't use that word. I want to get rid of the D out of that. It's not a disorder. Oh, well, you have a disorder because your brain is naturally reacting to a horrible situation to protect you. It puts you in shock. And then over the course of months or years, it slowly allows you to deal with the trauma. That's what PTS is. Okay? Post-traumatic stress is not a disease. It's not a disorder. It's a completely natural response to a very horrible situation. And it's your brain's way of preserving itself ladies and gentlemen, and taking medications for it are not going to help. Masking the situation, masking the symptoms, and not actually addressing the root cause of the problem is not going to help. And not understanding and comprehending the people that are going through it is not going to help. Shutting them up and telling them, here's some medication, go away, I talked to you for a half hour, which is what the VA does to these combat vets, is absolutely disgusting. Okay, and they're starting to get better with. I mean, they're getting more like PTS groups, or they call them, PTS-D groups, whatever, counseling groups and stuff. And they allow they're starting. There's many, and not all the mental health professionals at the VA are bad. There are many good ones too that are trying to help. Those are the ones that usually end up setting up like group meetings and stuff where at least the vets can talk to each other. That helps because they understand one another. They can relate to one another. They can be like battle buddies, but they're not in the battlefield now. Now they're in a new battle. It's called post-traumatic stress. Still can be battle buddies and help each other through it. Eating pills is not going to solve the problem. Feeding someone pills is not going to solve the problem. Okay, so the medical field has no idea how to deal with PTS because they really haven't spent any time looking into it, and they consider it, it's mental health. So they automatically, crazy people, wow, that guy's got post-traumatic stress. He's got a disorder. No, it's not a disorder. It's a completely natural thing. I'll repeat this 1,000 times if I have to. It's completely natural, ladies and gentlemen, to experience post-traumatic stress. You just have to work through it. That's how your brain protects itself from shattering into 1,000 pieces. You don't think that I was in shock after losing my wife? People were asking me how I wasn't like on my knees crying. I mean, I was. The first month, there were days where I was crying my eyes out for hours on end, just snot running out of my face. It was very, very, very horrible. You go through that. But yeah, I was in shock for a while. I even remember talking to my mother-in-law and my sister-in-law about it, and the three of us agreed that all of us were in shock. My sister-in-law even said to me, yeah, I'm still in shock, I think. And this was like 2 months later. And she said, because she's like, she's a very smart cookie. I love my little sister-in-law. Teresa's just one of the smartest chicks I've ever met on the planet. I love her to death. And she knew. She knows she's got PTS, but she's dealing with it. We talk, we chat. Her and her mother chat and her talk. She talks to her friend. She's got a good support network. She'll get through it. Now, that event, by the way, that trauma will always be there, but eventually you work out that stress to the point where, yes, you can get back into things. There are some people where the event is so traumatic that there will be lingering effects on you because it might change you as a person. Now, you as the individual going through it, like if you catch yourself, I do it sometimes. Like today, I lost my shit when I was in traffic. Right? There's an idiot. I'm trying to get to the post office before 5 o'clock, and there was an idiot that was in front of me doing 15 miles an hour in a 35 for no reason. For no reason other than just because that's how they felt like driving. There was a line of cars behind me, and none of us could pass this person because, the whole double lines thing, and there's plenty of cops all over the place. I'm not going to give a revenue generator any excuse. Now, if there weren't cops around, then cop didn't see it. I didn't do it. But I got pissed. I lost it. And I felt myself getting angry, and I literally started to get road rage and just started to yell, and I realized I was stressed already, and I was already anxious from other things, right? And I was now just venting it on this person who, although was driving like a complete idiot and should not be on the roadway because they didn't, it was just like, not even just driving slow. They couldn't decide where they wanted to turn. It was one of those people. You know what I'm talking about if you drive the road enough. Anybody that drives knows what I'm talking about. I'm sure everybody's run into a person like this. Anyway, yeah, it pissed me off, but they would have been the recipient of my anger. And, to an extent they were because I was yelling for a second, but they weren't really the ones that deserved it, I guess, or it should have been, the anger was unjustified towards them. I was just venting because I was already frustrated, pissed, in a hurry, whatever you want to call it, Anxiety can come from a level of things. We do it to ourselves. We get ourselves amped up, right? And then you get yourself into that state, and the stupidest little thing pisses you off. Well, people that suffer PTS go through that, as you can see, as I just said, with myself. So, you as the person going through it, you have to take personal responsibility. Now, I'm speaking to you people that suffer PTS like I do. Okay, if you go through an event like I went through, and you start to lose your shit in the car, you need to like catch yourself. Now, I mean, I wasn't literally flipping out and going, nuke level, but I was starting to get really pissed off. And Monster's my little co-pilot. She looked up at me with the look of, "Dad, are you okay?" And I know the look on her face. Dog. She's been my service dog for 8 years, so her and I communicate very well together. And I know the different looks that she gives me. And she was genuinely worried about. She could see that I was getting pissed, and she came over and she did what she was supposed to do. And I was like, "It's okay, honey. I know." And I caught myself. And I had to keep myself in check. Now, ladies and gentlemen, you have to do the same thing. If you suffer from it and you go off like that, you have to, okay? Because that's one of the things that scares people that may not go through it, or at the present time aren't going through it and may not understand it, right? And then that gives credence to the, "Oh my God, they're crazy." Okay, so try. I know sometimes you can't. I'm not bashing you. I love all of you, okay? Even if I don't know you. But just try to remember, if you start to lose your anger, you start to lose your temper and you get angry, try to remember that perhaps it's the anxiety that you already have in you, okay, that might be fueling some of that. And maybe you're getting yourself amped up over whatever. People with PTS who are still going through it and working through it can quite often get amped up and get very quickly, right? Well, you just got to know that. We just have to be aware of ourselves. I think understanding comes into play. I'm going to get into this more in the second hour, but understanding comes into play yet again. Okay? Totally. Not only outsiders understanding what PTS actually is, people that may not have gone through it yet in their lives, okay? Which, if you go through something traumatic, eventually you're going to go through it, even if you don't realize it. Okay? You will. It's your brain's natural reaction to a very traumatic situation. Okay, you lose a loved one, you lose a parent. I watched my mom die. Found out 2 weeks before she died that she was dying of cancer. Nobody told me until 2 weeks before. Because I was deployed, came home on emergency leave, saw my mom, I hadn't seen her in over a year, held her hand, talked to her for, a little less than 2 weeks, and then she died. And I held my mom's hand. And I watched her take her last breath as well. That was traumatic. If you lost a parent, traumatic. You lost a child, traumatic. You lost a spouse, traumatic. You lost a best friend, a loved one, anyone, traumatic. Car accident, rape, traumatic. Abusive relationship, traumatic.
This is Sparta!
You're starting to get the picture? We're all going to go through it. But everybody else understanding it, and you understanding yourself, ladies and gentlemen, is how you can deal with it. Stay tuned. 3 short minutes. We will be right back. Ladies and gentlemen, we are back with hour number 2 here on tonight's live edition of Down the Rabbit Hole. I am your host, Popeye, from FederalJack.com, PopeyeRadio.com, and, of course, here at Truth Frequency. And by the way, big shout out and much love to Chris and Sheree Gio for providing the platform for you all to hear me speak to you wherever you are in the world. If it were not for Chris and Sheree Gio, ladies and gentlemen, you would have to hear me in podcast format in YouTube and over on PopeyeRadio.com and FederalJack.com only. You wouldn't be able to actually tune in live to me because I don't think I would work with any other radio network, to be honest with you. They're the only network I really want to deal with. This is the only network like this that is out there. I'm not bashing any other network. I'm just saying, and maybe I'm spoiled because of working at TFR and being here for 2 years now. But much love to Chris and Cherie for giving me a place to broadcast from, and for being very good friends behind the scenes when I needed them, and for being good to all of you for giving you guys this platform to tune into us. So thank you, Chris and Cherie. Really do appreciate it. So getting back into hour number 2 here, into PTS. I was talking about understanding going into the break, and I got cut off without getting into it enough, I feel. So I want to talk about this a little more. First, when I say understanding, I mean that not only do the outside people, I shouldn't say that because it kind of makes a separation. scratch that. Belay my last, as we would say in the Guard. I want people that don't understand what PTS is. Or not even what I want. I would like people who don't understand what PTS is to have a better understanding of those who do deal with it, or just have a better understanding of it as a whole, in general. It takes away the fear. Oh my God, that person has PTSD. It takes away that whole fear factor. But besides that, the people that suffer from it, the people that deal with it, I want you to understand it as well, too. I want you to understand that you're not an evil person, and you're not the only person going through this, by the way. There are many of us. If you know somebody that's got PTS, maybe you don't suffer it yourself, but you know somebody, you could reach out to them and talk to them. Maybe you've been through something in your life that they might find comparable, or they might, maybe you do understand them. Maybe you've had it yourself. Reach out to them and talk to that person. Don't try to tell them to get pills or see a shrink or you should do this or you should... Don't try to give them answers. See, that's one of the biggest problems. It's funny because in understanding PTS, it made me remember something I learned at a very young age about women. When women come to you guys and they bitch to you about their problems, women don't want you to fix them. Believe me, they'll tell you if they want it fixed. Even though guys are just, we're programmed. We fix things. I fix stuff, right? Women don't want you to fix stuff when they come to you. Sometimes they do, but if they do, they'll tell you, I want you. They'll explicitly instruct you. Trust me. Most of the time, I won't say all the time, but most of the time, if a woman is bitching to you, it's not really at you unless it is at you. And there's a drastic difference, and you'll know the difference. But if a woman is complaining about something or coming to you with a problem, she doesn't really want you to fix it. She wants you to listen to her. She wants you to shut your face, shut your mouth, and open your ears. And just listen. And then at the end, when she's all done, maybe you can, you could possibly try this, but it is what it is, or whatever. You leave it open-ended like that. Maybe they'll take your advice if you feel like, giving some or trying to be Mr. Fix-It. But just listening to the problem, it's amazing. So, dealing with PTS, I thought about that, and I was like, wow, people that deal with PTS are a lot like that. They don't want, a lot of times people think that if you're going to them to talk, and a lot of it is out of good intention. It's not done to the people that do this. I'm not bashing you. It's not like you're doing it to be dicks. Trust me, I've been there in my life where I've done the same thing. You want to help. Maybe you love that person so much, you're like, oh my God, they need my help. So you go to help them. People with PTS don't need that. They don't need you to, maybe if you see that they need help, if they're way out of control, okay, then fine. But the ones that are trying to work through it and just want to talk, they just want to talk. They just want someone that's going to shut up and listen to them because they feel like nobody understands them. Why do you think combat vets, these young kids, they kill themselves when they come home? Because they've experienced some horrific things and they come back to the normal world, or what to them is the normal world. And the things they've went through, they feel detached from everybody around them. They feel like an alien. The only way I can describe it is to be in a room. It feels like you're in a room with 1,000 people, and they're all 1,000 of them could be chatting. They might even have acknowledged your existence. But it doesn't matter. It feels like you are alone because you can't connect on a human level with any of them because they're all worried about going to the club. They're all worried about, so-and-so going to so-and-so's wedding next month, or did you see what was on American Idol or whatever? That probably shows I haven't watched TV in years, but whatever new piece of garbage crap programming is on television. Oh, That's how they feel. Like the oxygen is being sucked out of the room around their head. Like they're in a vacuum and they can't breathe. Nobody around them understands them. Their family doesn't, their wife, their girlfriend, whatever. And even if they're trying, ladies, I know some of you try really hard, the wives of these soldiers and airmen and Marines and sailors, you guys try really hard, and it's not your fault. Some of you don't, but some of you do try, and you're there for your men. But they can't relate to you because you can't understand what they're going through because you maybe haven't had that experience. Unless you yourself went through a traumatic experience, then they could probably relate to you. But because you're their wife, you're part of another world. It's hard for them. It's hard for them to merge the two, and the military and the VA doesn't help them. And they come home and they don't have anybody, and they're in this, like I said, they're in this vacuum where it feels like the air is being sucked out from around their heads. They can't breathe. And they don't know what to do. They just want it to stop. The only way they know how to make it to stop is to kill themselves. So yeah, we can blame the government. And believe me, there are those who will be held accountable. That's what people like me, Joe, and all you other people in the alternative media are for. We hold these scumbags to account. We'll let everybody know loud and clear what these shitbags have done. And then we, as a collective group of individuals, human beings, need to hold these people to account. However, we sort that out. Welcome to Hanging House. 12 on, 12 off. Joe and I have already volunteered. So, if we want to get through this, though, we have to understand that not only are they responsible, we are too here. That's why I'm doing this broadcast, to help you guys understand what PTS is. I wasn't going to come live tonight. I was going to take off tonight and then, next week, the next 2 weeks, because I'm on the road, because I'm doing my road trip. And I decided I needed to come live tonight. I wasn't going to. And I was having a conversation on Facebook today, and I decided that this would be a good, because I had wanted to talk about this, and I had somewhat of a conversation on this level with Chris and Sheree about a week ago, and they were like, dude, you need to, they were like, you should be a counselor, or you should, you should write a book or whatever, and I probably should, but for right now, since, I don't have that time before I get on the road, I was inspired to do this broadcast. So hopefully, while I'm out and about in my adventure, this thing, I actually will put this on as one of the rebroads so people can hear it again. It's important for this stuff to get put over the airwaves and for people to hear this. It's important for people to understand this on so many levels. The people that experience PTS, the people that don't understand what it is, but maybe want to help. I mean, everybody out there at a base level, most people are good. There are some shitbags. There are some people that are just scum, and they need to swing from an end of a rope, I guess, because maybe they're that corrupt, and they've just been that corrupted, and there's no reversing it. Sometimes things are just bad. But for the most part, people are good. I really do believe in humanity. As much as it pisses me off when I go to Walmart at 1 o'clock in the morning and I see the brain dead people walking around buying stuff that they don't need, and people of Walmart.com, enough said, right? Yeah, that stuff pisses me off. Black Friday, seeing people trample over their fellow human beings while they're having a heart attack to get the next Xbox or PlayStation 4 or flat screen TV. Yeah. That pisses me off, but that's been done. That's been done on purpose. I've talked about that ad nauseum here. That's been done on purpose. I really do believe that mankind has more to it. I actually believe more in man. If I didn't, I wouldn't come on and talk to you all, and I wouldn't try to give you guys this glimpse into PTS. I wouldn't even waste my time. Do you think I would come on air if I didn't believe in you or love you and respect you and tell you the stuff that I've been through? Would I share my personal story about losing my wife? Do you know how personal that is? Do you know how raw that is for me to come on and talk? How many radio hosts come on and talk to you about that? I don't think there's any that I could think ever that have ever come on air and talked. I mean, maybe once, or I'm sure in the history of radio, somebody's come on and talked about it before. I can't be the first in history, but I'm willing to bet I'm one of the first in history that's ever come on and talked about it like this. If I didn't trust and respect you all, if I didn't believe in your true potential, I wouldn't even bother coming to you on this level. I wouldn't even bother coming on air. There wouldn't be a point. I'd be talking, I'd be wasting my breath. I don't do things and waste my time. Time is very precious to me, ladies and gentlemen. Something that I've learned even more so after losing my wife. I don't like to waste time. So I wouldn't come on here for 2 hours tonight when, again, I wasn't going to come live tonight. I'll totally admit it. I was going to put a rebroad on. I decided a couple hours ago, no, I'm not. I'm going to come on live. I want to talk about this because there's plenty of people out there that are going through what I'm going through, and they feel alone. They feel the same way that I do. They feel the same way and feel the same things that I've been through. How do you think I'm able to describe to you how people feel or what they go through in such vivid detail? Because I've experienced it. I'm not an author. I'm not a magician, and it's not hyperbole. I'm not pulling this stuff out of the ether. I'm telling you because I've been through it myself. That's how come I can speak to you with such raw, uncut truth about it and emotion. Because I've been through it. I really want, now this is something I want you all to just take better care of each other. I mean, it really doesn't matter what I want. We need to take better care of each other. We need to just be a little bit more understanding of one another. I mean, that's one of the things Merce used to talk about, and I talked about this in the show I did, The Legacy of Merce, and if you don't know what I'm talking about, I believe the show actually aired, I think it was 11/18, if I remember correctly, of 2014. So if you go back in my archives over on federaljack.com, actually just you could do that or go over to popeyeradio.com and just scroll down to November 18th of 2014, and you can download the audio to your device or whatever and listen to it. And I talked about Merce's legacy of being the change. And one of the things I talked about, and I did in subsequent shows too, was about understanding one another and being good to one another. When I say understanding, I mean literally, like, put yourself in the other person's shoes. Try to think how you would react. Try to think what you would go through. And this applies to not just dealing with someone that's got PTS. I mean, across the board. I mean, do you know how many things could be solved if there wasn't as many misunderstandings as there are? You know, the powers that shouldn't be like people to be confused, because then they can twist and turn the narrative to whatever they want. But if people were openly just communicating and not afraid to communicate with each other, it'd be much harder to control the masses. And that's why they don't push you and your neighbor getting together. That's why they want you to think your neighbor's frigging Al-Qaeda. Or now it's ISIS. Or is it ISIS and Ebola working with the North Koreans? I don't know who the hell it is at this point. Maybe it's the Russians. We'll just blame them. They want you to think your neighbor could be a Russian. Oh, could he be a spy? I mean, it's ridiculous. They push fear to divide people. If everybody understood each other better, they wouldn't be able to do that. You understand that? So A, it helps people with PTS, 'cause or any traumatic event or anything, just helps to understand who your who that person is, what they're going through. Okay? You'll probably look at them differently if you have a better understanding of that person. But then it also serves to stop what's going on. Do you see what I mean when I say micro and macro? It's law of correspondence, as above, so below. So if you change in yourself the micro, you will put that out into the macro, the universe. So it's not only being good to your neighbors, being good to one another and taking care of each other, because we're all humans, right? Doesn't matter what color we are, what sexuality someone is, whatever, if they're gay, straight, doesn't matter if they're black, white, red, purple with pink polka dots. We're human. Doesn't matter what their religious beliefs are, as long as you're not being an idiot and trying to kill somebody else because you think your religious belief is better than the other person's. And by the way, that's not just one religion. It does it over any others. It's all of these major religions do it to everybody else. It's the whole argument about mainstream religion as a whole, not any one in particular. Okay. Just throwing that out there. Anyway, I don't want to get sidetracked with that because then we'll get into a religious debate and people will turn the show off. Whole different topic. I've gone over that before. You can go back and listen to the archives. Anyway, they can keep us divided because people don't get each other. You know, you see the thing with Ferguson. I had an argument with a good friend of mine about this last night, that he thinks he's a black guy, he thinks police brutality is specifically aimed at black people and that white people don't experience it and that white people don't get shot by cops. And I was like, you're statistically wrong. I could show you case after case after case after case. It's just the news media only focuses on black guys getting killed by white cops now because they're trying to instigate. But there are white people that are killed by cops all the time. They just don't, you don't see anybody making a federal case out of it. And I'm not saying that black people don't get profiled more, don't get pulled over more, don't get screwed with more. I'd be foolish if I said that. That's totally true. They totally do, unfortunately. But the issue of police brutality as a whole affects everyone, right? But now they've got everybody believing that if you say police brutality, oh, it's just those black people that are bitching about cops. And, you know, look, they rioted in Ferguson, so we actually do need those MRAPs. And these are people that 6 months before were pissed off that, oh, my God, Obama has MRAPs. He's trying to take over the country. He's a commie with no birth certificate. But 6 months later, the MRAPs are okay because, hey, black people are rioting in Ferguson. Maybe if those people had a better understanding of the situation, they wouldn't be so easily swayed and controlled. You see? I know you were all wondering where the hell I was going with that example, but there you have it. If those people had a better understanding, the mainstream media and the powers that shouldn't be wouldn't be able to control them. They wouldn't be able to control the narrative and twist it because 6 months ago, 8 months ago, it was about police brutality being a huge epic problem. 3 or 4 days before that whole thing with Ferguson, it was police brutality is a problem. Why do they have MRAPs on the streets? Blah, 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 blah. Do we really need military vehicles here on the streets? And then all of a sudden, the narrative got changed. And because people don't have a full grasp on the situation, a full understanding of the situation, they were manipulated. So, understanding each other on a very base level is important. Although you're told it's not, through many different means, whether it's actually saying that to you or programming it into you that you should actually be afraid of your neighbor and all this other crap, right? And, you know, getting you away from, you know, making you think that it's weird to hang out with your neighbors or talk to your neighbors. Like 20 years ago, when everybody and their mother got together on their block and did barbecues and all that stuff, there was stronger community back then. They don't want that. They need everybody broken apart. So do you understand? So even if you get away from PTS for a second and you look at the powers that shouldn't be, that we constantly talk about, right? Everybody go, how are we going to beat them? I'm just one person. I can't do anything. Yes, you can. Basic understanding of your fellow man beats their game, makes them irrelevant. You won't be looking to some schmuck in a suit that you think wears a cape to save you. Rand Paul. You won't look at these faux heroes. Vote me in and I'll solve everything. No, sorry, that doesn't work. Does not work. What did Einstein say? The definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over and over again and expecting a different result. Yeah. Keep smashing your head against the brick wall and hoping that you won't split your head open for the 15th time and require stitches and possibly have another concussion, maybe leading to a brain hemorrhage and eventual death. Of course, voting is kind of like a brain hemorrhage. Well, voting for president. I mean, voting for certain things like local issues, very good. Voting for president, really? You don't have a vote. That's like choosing which rapist. I want rapist A. I want the one on the left, please. Yes, he looks more appealing. So at least I have a more attractive, well-speaking president as I'm getting raped. Because that's what politics is. Anyway, I'm getting sidetracked. So the way to beat them, one of the ways of making them irrelevant is understanding. So, that being said, getting back to PTS, understanding. understand if someone in your family goes through this and they have maybe a bad day and they're in the kitchen and they spill something and they start screaming and throwing stuff around. You know what? Just don't yell and scream at them, because that's going to make it worse. And I know sometimes some people try to be calm and that doesn't help. And then they worry and then, oh my God, should I call the cops? No, you don't. Calling the cops doesn't solve anything, because the cops don't know how to deal with people with mental issues. They pull their guns out and shoot them. That's how cops deal with things. Okay? Don't ever call the cops if you have a problem. You should handle things yourself. Cops don't come solve problems anyway. Oh my God, there's someone breaking into my house. Come save me. You should have a gun and shoot the bastard yourself and then call the cops. Hey, someone broke into my house and I shot him and he's dead. Come clean it up. That's what they do. If your family member or loved one, whoever, friend is going through something, yeah, calm them down. Try to calm them down. But don't call the cops on them. I mean, even if they're out of control, maybe you should... Again, if you had a better support system, if that person had a better support system, it wouldn't get to that. The reason it gets to that is because they don't have anyone to talk to and they don't know how to deal with it. And then eventually it just comes out, right? Maybe they were taught that they shouldn't be a pussy. Not by you as their parents or their loved one. Maybe that's what they were taught in basic training. Or their commander. Their chain of command. Oh, suck it up. That's what they told me when I first got injured. And I didn't. For the first 3 or 4 days, I didn't go to medical until I couldn't walk anymore. And I had to literally drag myself across the base to go to medical. One of my friends had to help me over there. Because they'd rather you work. They don't want you to get hurt. They need you. They don't care about you. They need you as a body. They need you there. Otherwise, they got to make up for it. And they got to write reports and everything else. You know what they say? Suck it up and do it. Don't be a pussy. Don't be a little bitch. Shut up. Shut your mouth. You experience PTSD. Shut up. Don't say anything. Be a man. That's not being a man. You're not dealing with it. Being a man, guys, if you're told that and you actually buy into that, being a real man is opening up and sharing your feelings. Even if it's with, you don't have to do it on air like I'm doing. I'm doing it on the air for other people's benefit. I'm not doing it on air for my benefit. I have a support network. I built one of my own. But it's okay to talk about this stuff. You're not a pussy if you talk about it. In fact, I have more respect for you as a man, as a fellow guy. I have more respect for you if you're willing to talk about this stuff than if you're not willing to talk about it. Just so you know. I really do. And pardon my French. But if somebody doesn't like that you're feeling these feelings or emotions and they tell you to quit being a pussy, tell them to go F themselves. I won't even say it. I'll be polite because I know we're going out over FM stations and stuff and micro broadcasters. So tell them to go F themselves. Okay? You're not a wimp or pussy for going through what you're going through. It's perfectly natural. And if you need to talk to somebody, you talk to somebody. Don't get yourself to the point where you blow up and you lose it. That's just going to exacerbate the problem. It's okay to need help. It's okay. You're not less of a man. You're actually more of a man for seeking it. We'll be right back. We are back, ladies and gentlemen. Final segment, tonight's live edition of DTRH. Wow. Holy crap. How did an hour and a half already go by? Could you explain that one to me? Hour and a half. Powerful. Powerful hour and a half, to say the least. I don't want people to walk away from this broadcast tonight thinking that people with PTS are broken. This is a major important thing I want to stress. If you're going through this, or if you know someone that's going through it, PTS doesn't mean you're broken. Don't ever think that. Whether you're the loved one of someone dealing with it or you're the person dealing with it yourself. You're not broken. Not by any means. PTS, again, is a natural reaction to something horrible. As long as you understand this, as long as you can see through this, you can work through it. Look, it depends on what you've been through. It depends on your brain. There is no guide. Just understand that it's natural and normal, and you may eventually get through it where it's okay. You know, I have people tell me that I have a lot of widow and widower friends now. Weird group to be in. I'm one of the youngest that I know. There actually are many more young widows and widowers out there than people realize, but many of them have told me that some of them are listeners to the show. Some of them are tuned in right now. Many of them have told me over the months that even 15, 20 years, that I have had people message me and say, Popeye, I lost my husband or I lost my wife 20 years ago. There's not a day goes by where I still don't think about them, and there are things that will still make them cry 20 years later. So I can't lie to you and tell you people that suffer from PTS that the event that you went through or the trauma that you went through is going to be worked through easily, or that you'll ever actually completely get out of that tunnel. But there is a light. So you will get sunshine on your face regardless. It may be an endless tunnel where you get kind of close to the end, but you're almost out the door. You're not, once in a while you still kind of deal with it. And eventually you might actually come to terms with everything, and your symptoms may subside. And they may not. Again, there is no base level. I know science wants to do that. I know mankind, we have to have limits to it. There has to be some sort of thing, a base level to go from, and then they are Popeye. It makes no sense otherwise. No, what makes perfect sense is that it's a natural reaction, and everybody's is different. Although there are certain base things that everybody will go through, the reaction time, how long they deal with it, the severity, it all depends on a myriad of things that person went through. There's many different factors. But the basics, if we understand the basics of it, that's how you can deal with it. It's like anything else. Everything else branches off of those basics. So if we have a good understanding of the basics, well then the rest isn't really that hard to deal with. I mean, it's easier said than done. It's extremely hard. I'm not trying to diminish it, trust me. But it's easier, I should say. Okay? It's not as hard. It's not as hard as it can be. So you're not broken. If you suffer from this, you're not broken at all. Okay? And don't think that. Don't. It's okay. I've said this 1,000 times. I'll say it again. It's okay. You need to hear it. It's okay. It's cool. It's all right for you to be upset. It's all right for you to be going through this. I mean, you're human. Unless you were a cyborg robot, then maybe you wouldn't have these feelings. And if you didn't have these feelings, if you could go and experience, if you're like a soldier and you went and you had to kill people, and you killed like 15, 20 people, and you don't even bat an eye over it, that's not normal. Just so you know. Right? It's normal to lose sleep over it. It's normal to anguish over pulling that trigger. It's okay. If you were in a car accident and you suffer from it, it's okay. You're not a wimp. But it's not manly, Popeye. I see all these people walking around and let me tell you something. That's the biggest mistake we all make, is we see people walking around and we judge based on what we see, right? Either on Facebook or Instagram, or what we see people, the face that we see people putting on in public. The problem is, and this is a quote, and I don't remember who said this, but we compare everybody else's highlight reel to our everyday life, which we consider to be almost like our blooper reel. So we take what we consider to be their highlight reel and compare that to all our outtakes and our garbage, or what we consider to be our garbage. Because we have a full understanding of ourselves, but we don't really understand what that person's going through. That person on the outside might look like 1,000%. They might look like $1,000,000. And on the inside, they are going through extreme turmoil. They're just a good actor or actress. You don't know. But because you don't understand, you judge yourself based on their highlight reel. You see how understanding could immediately change that situation and stop that? It would soothe your hurt ego. And I'm not saying that as a sarcastic comment. I mean that. It would soothe your hurt ego. You wouldn't compare it. You'd be like, oh, wow, they're actually just like me. And you know what? Not only would that bring them down a level in your eyes, it would bring you up a level, and you'd both be on the same playing field. And then you'd realize that you weren't alone and that you weren't a freak. Because you're not. See how simple that is? So just remember that. You're not a freak, ladies and gentlemen. If you're going through this, you're definitely not a freak. Okay? You're a normal human being. And I would be worried and concerned if you weren't going through this. So it's okay. Now, I know I'll probably listen to this radio show later and be like, damn it, I should have said this or I should have said that. I'm sure there's a million other things that I could go over. And I will. I'll end up every time I do a show about this and I talk about this. Although it's never been this in-depth or this raw like this. I always listen later on and I say there's something I should have said or whatever, but I really want you to take away from this broadcast tonight the basics. Just understand each other better. Take the time to talk to somebody. If you have PTS, go try to seek out other people. You know, there's Facebook groups, guys. You know what's helped me? There's a couple widow and widower groups on Facebook that have helped me out. Even if I rarely go in there and post things. I just go in there sometimes and read what other people are going through, even if it's for 20 minutes. Just seeing that someone else is going through what I'm going through lets me know that I'm not alone. That's helpful, believe it or not. Do the same thing. You don't have to talk. There's plenty of groups out there. There's plenty of people that are willing to talk to you and share their experiences like I am. You have to go out and research that stuff. That stuff is there. If you don't have a support system, and I'm telling you this because I'm trying to empower you, I'm not picking on you. If you suffer from PTS and you don't have a support system, eventually it could get bad if it's really bad. Like if your PTS is intense, it could get really bad, okay? You could do something stupid, you know, as I was talking about before, soldiers, sailors, airmen, Marines killing themselves, okay? Other people kill themselves too because of PTS. You just don't hear it. It's not talked about. Oh, why did Gary commit suicide? I don't understand why he killed himself. He seemed so happy. Yeah, well, maybe something traumatic happened to Gary and nobody gave him a friggin', a talking to. No one sat him down and said, Gary, you need an ear? You know, I'm more sympathetic to that. When I see people, I have a vibe now. I have like a spider sense for that if people have been through a lot and like I respect them or whatever, or I care about them in some fashion. I care about everybody, so it doesn't matter. But I reach out to, there's people I've reached out to, you know, like even people that I've just newer friends on Facebook or whatnot, and I see them going through something bad and, hey, you okay? You need an ear? You know, be surprised how much that could help somebody, what that can do for somebody. Now, if everybody did that and we were just better to each other on a basic level, not even for levels of just someone suffering from PTS, how about we were just better to each other? Maybe we wouldn't be putting people in situations in many times that created PTS. Maybe if we respected each other on a different level, maybe rape wouldn't occur like it does. Because, you know, sometimes, not all the time, but sometimes some culture can lead to it. I'm not going to get into a debate about that or not. It's a totally different topic. But certain things in pop culture can kind of, I don't want to say lead to it, but kind of set it up, right? So maybe if people had a better understanding of one another, look, that kind of crime is going to happen no matter what, because it's really not about sex. Rape is about control, and people that do it should be strung from a tree. That's a whole side argument. The point is, if people were understanding each other on a more human level, that kind of aberrant behavior wouldn't happen. Murder is illegal, still happens. Making it illegal isn't going to solve the problem. A change of perspective will solve the problem, ladies and gentlemen. And it's the same thing with what I'm talking about tonight. It's a shift in your perspective. It's understanding the guy next to you a little bit better. one of the things I used to do when I was a tow truck driver is I used to pick a lot of people up that were pissed off, right? A lot of people. And I'd pick them up on the highway. They'd be waiting 45 minutes, and I'd get there, and they'd be all angry. And when I got out of the truck, I used to try to diffuse the situation. I could have easily escalated it, which I did plenty of times when the guy was a schmuck or, try to get mouthy, or if they put their hands up. If you put your hands up within like a 3-foot zone of me, it was over. But I digress. So I would get out of the truck, and 9 times out of 10, I would be able to diffuse the situation. And on the way, especially if it was a long tow, going out to like Pennsylvania. I remember I was doing a lot of this when I was doing AAA stuff, which is what I'm referring to, was when I was in New Jersey. So I towed stuff out to like New York. I towed out to Pennsylvania, Maryland, wherever, Connecticut. And on these long tows, I would sit and talk to these people. And a lot of times the people, like your first judgment of them, this is when I was young, and I was about 19, 20 when I started this job. And I learned really quick, I realized that a lot of the people that I had these preconceived notions about and I had judged just because of how they looked on the outside, I was wrong. I was completely wrong about them. And as I got to know them, some of them were complete scumbags. Some of them were just like, they looked cool, and then when you got to talk to the person, and even if I played it off like, oh, that's cool, these people were such scum. And then there were some of the nicest people I've ever met in the world. I met a woman, and I still remember her. This is like probably 15 years ago. She reminded me of my mom. She was a single mom. She had 2 kids. Her ex-husband was causing all sorts of problems because we had towed her before, so we kind of knew some of her backstory. And she's a very sweet lady. And she ended up having to pay cash for most of the tow. And I knocked about 20 miles off the tow for her. And she tried to give me a tip, and I refused to take it, and I gave her the money. And I said to her, no, you remind me of my mom. You remind me of my mom way too much, and I can't do that. I would want someone to take care of my mom the way I'm taking care of you. And I still remember that. It's like 15, 20 years ago. I did that because I had a better understanding of her as a human. I could have looked at her and been like, she's, some crazy woman. Her ex is probably a nice guy, and she's probably blah, 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 blah. In this case, and that happens. But in this case, this woman was actually really nice, and she was in a bad situation. She didn't have a lot of money, so I was like, don't worry about the tip. I don't want a tip. Keep the money. Helping you out was tip enough for me. Because I understood her situation. I understood her as a fellow human. And that made me want to be nice to her and made me want to help out. And just be, help out. And, I can help out a little bit here or there. I want my good deed for the day. Right? I used to call them, that's what I used to do. That's my good deed for the day. If only more people did that. And I'm not saying I'm a superhero or I'm special for doing that. I'm not. I'm a typical human being like you, ladies and gentlemen. I make mistakes every day, just like you. So I'm not special. But I try to practice what I preach. And I've been doing so for a very long time. But the reason I was able to, the reason I did that, the reason that whole thing transpired was because I sat and I talked to her and got to know her over the course of time that we had towed her vehicle a few times because it was the world's largest piece of crap. She couldn't afford a new one. I understood her situation, and as much as, you want to help out and be nice to somebody, you're limited to a large extent, right? Unless you're a bazillionaire or some oil sheik, right? So the way I could help her was to shave some money off of her tow bill at the time. So I did. I understood the situation she was in. Now, can you imagine if everybody just had a better understanding of everybody else around them? The game would change tomorrow. And Mersey used to talk about this all the time. She went through some rough stuff, and unfortunately it took her dying for a lot of people that knew her in her personal life to actually realize the person that she was. As magnificent as my wife was, as awesome of a human being that Mersey was, there were plenty of people in her life that didn't know it. Now, I'm sure from hearing me talk about her, many of you are going to be like, come on, Popeye. No, because she didn't go around telling everybody about the good deeds she did. So the only thing that anybody ever remembered in her personal life was the mistakes my poor wife ever made. The things that, again, they were errors, but as Kennedy said, she corrected her errors so that they wouldn't become a continuous mistake. She learned from them over the course of time. She helped others. My wife had a pretty rough time, okay? And a lot of people judged her. They didn't give her the leeway or they didn't even give her the basic human, just, I'll give you 5 minutes of understanding. Not even that. Not even 5 basic minutes of human understanding on a connection of what, that level. No, they all judged her. And you know what happened after she passed away and they heard me talk about her and they heard me do the shows? Many of these people that were in her personal life, they were astounded. And now they feel bad because now they can't talk to her. Now they can't tell her, wow, I get you. I see you in a whole different light now. I have so much more respect for you. Okay? They can't. Because they didn't, while she was alive, they didn't take the opportunity, which they could have. They could have. It's not that hard, ladies and gentlemen. We do it all the time. We blow our friends off, or we blow people we care about off, or maybe we want to get to know better because whatever bullshit reasons that we have, that we've constructed in our own minds, we're too busy, I can't do it for this, or I can't do it because of that, whatever, it doesn't matter. There's a million different reasons. But because people didn't take the 5 minutes because they were too busy or whatever to get to know her or understand her on a much deeper level, they forever will have to deal with that guilt, and that'll never go away. And there's nothing I can do to assuage their guilt. They'll feel like that forever. But don't beat yourself up over it. Not just those people, but anyone that's gone through the same thing or, has had the same experience. You learn from it. Again, if you learn from your errors, then they won't become mistakes. As Kennedy said, an error only becomes a mistake when you refuse to correct it. So learn from this, ladies and gentlemen. I share this with you, not to bash anybody, not to pick on anybody. I share it with you so that you have a better understanding. Myself, I just recently talked to a family member who I hadn't spoke to really in probably about, on or off, in probably about 10 years. And after about 3 hours of chatting with this person on the phone, they said to me, holy crap, I can't believe that nobody ever gave you, and he admitted this, no one had ever given me in my family the courtesy of 20 minutes. Because there were people that were accusing me of things that were not true, and because nobody was believing me, I was like, I was moving anyway. I'm just tired of this crap. I had gone home to deal with some stuff after my mother passed away, to deal with her stuff, and back to New Jersey for a little while. And I was like, I'm moving back to Florida. And I left. And it was not, there were many reasons I left, but one of the reasons was because everybody had pretty much cut me off based on these lies that were going around about me. Anyway, long story short, it came out almost 10 years later that I was correct and that I wasn't doing any of that stuff. And the people that now found out about that and realized that they were wrong, you know what they said to me? This family member, they said, oh my God, I can't believe no one ever gave you 20 minutes to even talk to you. I said, yeah, you guys didn't even come and talk to me and ask me my side of the story or anything, or ask me or even tell me what was going on. Nobody even, because I didn't know what was going on. I had to find out word of mouth after I moved out of there later on. So I mean, imagine that. So nobody gave me the 5 minutes of understanding, that basic 5 human minutes that I referred to earlier. And when the person did, it turned into a 3-hour conversation because they were like, well, wait, what? And then at the end of it, they apologized to me and they said, look, I'm an idiot. I mean, repeatedly apologized to me. And it's good that it happened. At least, that's a positive step in the right direction with that whole thing. But I share that with you so you understand. And I share what Marseille went through for you to understand that, look, just because I come on radio doesn't mean I'm not a normal human being and I don't go through the same family bullshit drama that you go through. We all go through the same thing. We're all the same, okay? No one's better than anybody else. We're all equal. So there's a good base level to start off at. So I share this with you to help you understand that if you, because you will, come across a similar situation in your life, try to remember this show. Try to remember my words. Try to remember, oh, wow, Popeye talked about a situation like this, and holy crap. Maybe you'll see it from a different perspective, and you can diffuse the situation, and you can break the cycle. Understanding. Just like understanding someone on an individual level. It's amazing, right? It's amazing what could be possible if we just took 5 minutes to understand people and to sit and talk to them and actually communicate with them. That's why they want to control the internet, by the way. They want to shut the internet down. And I shouldn't say shut the internet down, because that's a meme that I shouldn't push, because I've talked about it before. They wouldn't shut it down like that. They'll filter, they'll reroute, they'll do plenty of things, they'll censor, but shutting it down would destroy their own system itself. So they won't literally shut it off like that, like we think, like a light switch, like the quote unquote internet kill switch. Although the possibility, it does exist, they can shut it off. Anyway, the point is, they want to take the internet out. They want to do whatever with the internet because it's a mode of communication. It's how someone right now in Europe, wherever, is listening to the sound of my voice. It is how people in California or Alaska or out in the Middle East or in Australia are listening to the sound of my voice. The internet allows us to communicate very clearly. I'm sitting here talking to nations all over the world. That's amazing. And by the way, this revolutionary act would have gotten me shot in many different countries around the world. Could get me shot here, the way things keep going, by the way, in this country. But imagine the level of communication that we have with each other right now. I'm talking to you about something that I went through, and there are people around the world that are going through the exact same human experience, because that's what this all is, right? An experience. And we're going through the exact same experience, yet you're on a different continent, some of you. But because of the internet, you can hear the sound of my voice, and you can understand that no matter what you're going through, it's okay. And that you will make it through this, and that you're not a freak for going through it. And I can help you, not make you, I can help you to see that, and I can help you feel a little bit better. And you can have a better understanding about yourself. Perhaps the people that are listening don't have it, but know somebody does. Now you have a different perspective on the person. Ooh, I keep saying that. Shift in perspective. One step to the right, ladies and gentlemen. And I'm not talking about right or left politics. That's why I don't always use that expression. And I don't want to say one step forward, because it almost sounds like Obama's Marxist crap. Move forward. Just take a step to the right and shift your perspective. It's like if you were trying to look at something through a pair of binoculars and perhaps there was a tree in your way. You can almost get a good picture, but damn it, that tree's in my way. So you move 4 feet to the right and you stand on top of a rock. You just shifted your perspective. Do you get the analogy? You want to save the world, ladies and gentlemen, we have to start by saving ourselves. We have to love ourselves. We have to love one another. And that's how we're going to save the world. It's that simple. A little bit of love, a little bit of understanding can go a long, long way. And as I said to you earlier, if I believed that the human race was done, if I didn't believe in humanity, and I really did believe that the human race was done, I wouldn't even waste my time. But I believe in you all. I believe in every single one of you out there. Okay, I wouldn't have come on here and shared this personal stuff with you tonight if I didn't believe in you. And we're almost out of time. We got about 50 seconds left. Remember, if you have PTS, you're not a freak. It's a natural, normal thing. It's okay. Forgive yourself. Love yourself. People, if you know someone that has PTS, love them and understand them. And show them some compassion and just give them some room to talk. It's that simple.
This is Sparta!
Ladies and gentlemen, we are out of time. Thank you for hanging out with me. It was a very powerful episode. I'll see you all again in a few weeks. Stay tuned to my Facebook page, Popeye DTRH, for updates from the road. I love you all. The solutions to our problems are most definitely an inside job. Go be the heroes I know you all are.